UNLV family, welcome back. You're listening to The Difference with Will Martin, and it is another Friday. Jermaine,
Yes, sir.
haven't seen you in a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You know, we had so much news going on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we talked last time about the Sade Robinson case,
Yeah.
and the verdict had just come down.
Yeah.
We're also talking about the news special with Gideon Verdine
Yeah.
about the unsolved homicides.
Yeah.
And the things going on, you know, just all this impacting families.
It's been a lot happening.
Been a lot happening, and you know, you and I talked last year about reckless driving, man, and it was
Sure did,
literally tear,
Yeah. Yeah.
just really
Yeah.
tear-filled conversation. We
Yeah.
had the mother who called in.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about some of this today, but the difference is today got a strategy to start actually dealing with
Good.
reckless driving.
Good.
Right now,
Good.
and so we're going to talk about that today. You know, it's interesting to me when you look just recently, this June, Fox News had a story on, and you know, Allstate, the Good Hands people.
Yeah.
You know those folks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Allstate did this analysis, and they ranked Milwaukee as one of the more dangerous places in terms of collisions.
Wow.
Right. Well, of course, an insurance company, they know if they're paying out
Yeah.
for
course.
car insurance, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, they were able to figure out, hey, wait a minute, we are actually above the national average in the number of collisions that happen here. And it's a lot of the reckless driving that happens that causes these accidents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, among the things that happen, of course they put up like Fox 6 put up most dangerous cities for driving,
Yeah.
and Milwaukee, you know, was in that report, right? So you got that piece, and then I know I'm going to say again for folks who listen to this show, if you were only listening, you were only getting half of the show, right?
Yeah.
If you subscribe through Facebook or YouTube, you can actually watch the show in addition to just hearing the show.
Yeah.
And I know that Byron's got some pictures for me. Hello, Byron. Hey, so you know, Byron's back there. You know, he is the backup to Debo when Debo's not in that chair.
Yeah.
That's right. So he's got some images for us. And so again, if you're watching, you can see them. If you're not watching, hey, make sure that you go to Facebook or YouTube and stream us live. But we've got some images of just, you know, that first image that Byron shared is a result. Now, for those people who are just listening, we've got an image up of a car that was just completely head on hit by a reckless driver. The reckless driver in this case had 13 charges in 1 year. Now, mind you, I'm not telling you that's all the charges he ever had. 13 charges from January 30th to October 17th when this accident happened.
Wait, so you said he had 13 reckless driving charges?
Oh, so part of it was speeding, part of it was reckless driving, you know, so it was all a mix of related things, right? But Jermaine, how old do you think somebody who would have 13 charges in 1 year, actually in 10 months, how old do you think that person would have been?
It sounds like someone that's under 18.
19. But he didn't start his charges at 19.
He started younger than that.
Correct. Yeah. And so it's one of those things. And I know one of the things that we'll talk about is the demographic isn't always the youngest, but we see an awful lot of young people who are involved with this as well. And and this is something that is not just impacting Milwaukee. It's impacting the entirety of the county and the region. We're seeing this reckless driving have an impact all across. Those images that Byron shared, those are images not from the city. Those are images from Franklin and Oak Creek.
What?
Yeah. So you know, people have this thought that, hey, that's what's going on in the city. It's not just impacting the city. We've got to actually make sure that we are addressing this holistically for the whole community. All right, now that's my intro. So we talked about problem, and there's plenty of problem to go around. What I'm happy to say is, you know, Jermaine, I'm kind of on it
Uh-huh.
these days, right? You know, we're on the cutting edge of things. So I want to tell you that Jessica Wineberg is the Vision Zero Policy Director for the city of Milwaukee. And so she's joining us here in the studio. So thank you, Jessica, for coming in.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So I said we got some. Oh, there we go. We got the applause there and all. Very nice, very nice. So we know we have a problem. The last year when we had this conversation, all we could talk about was the problem. I know that you are now part of the city's effort to move toward a solution, and so talk to us a little bit about there is Vision Zero.
Mm-hmm.
What is Vision Zero?
Yeah, Vision Zero is an international movement to have zero deaths be the goal of our transportation system.
Okay.
And the city of Milwaukee has adopted that as our goal. We did that about 2 years ago. And I think people who live here have seen a lot of changes in the streets, in driver's ed, various areas where we're trying to improve transportation safety, that as we continue to layer all these different strategies and interventions together, we really will drive down traffic death. It's the impacts on humans that matter the most.
Mhm.
I talk to people, and clearly you do too, who have lost a loved one or
Yep.
themselves are injured.
Yep.
Just because someone
In
was going
Jermaine's
to the
case,
store.
his own family has been impacted by reckless
My
driving as
son.
well.
My son, yeah, he was in a vehicle with his brother, and the reckless driver come speeding down Burleigh and hit the side of the car, and he was in the passenger seat. So he had a punctured lung, bruised pelvic. So yeah, that was
And thank
real
God he's a
scary.
young man.
Man, that was scary, man, just to get that call that happened. So yeah,
But he did make it
he
through.
did. Oh yeah.
I'm
Oh
so glad to
Yeah.
hear that. But that is so much trauma and
yeah.
impacts for him and for
Yeah.
your whole family.
Yeah.
Right.
And 70 Milwaukeeans were killed on our roadways last year.
Seven.
We're happy.
70?
We're happy that that's a decline from the year before of
Well, what
about
was the year before?
7%. It was about 75.
Okay.
So we went down 7%, and we really do think, it's because of these layered interventions that we're trying to do together.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the studio right off Capitol Drive. We
Yep.
put the bump outs in.
Yeah.
Some people might be a little frustrated by the bump outs, but they slow traffic. They keep some of the most reckless behaviors at bay, and
Yeah.
we are seeing results because of that. The city is doing lots of new and different things because this problem
Wow.
is so serious. So not everything we try is like tested or perfect, but we are willing to experiment and then
Yeah.
adjust and do things better the next time.
So 2 years ago, they laid out this vision of, hey, we'd like to have zero traffic-related deaths in Milwaukee. Right? Is that okay?
Yeah, with
So-
the goal year of 2037.
Okay, 2037.
So
Okay,
12 years from
oh my
now,
goodness, I'm
we're-
hoping I'll still be here in 12 years.
Yeah.
So that's when they set the goal. But at the point at which they set this goal, there wasn't a plan.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right. When we set this goal, it was like everybody try to do the best you can for transportation safety because it's such a dire problem. But we didn't go through a thoughtful process
Okay.
to come up with a plan.
Okay. So,
So
it was
we
really
did
the
those-
goal first.
The goal first.
Okay.
Let's take some early actions. Let's do some low hanging fruit that everybody agrees on. And now let's take the time, about a year, to create a public plan.
Okay.
We had a number of open houses. We had surveys online and in person. We shared recommendations that came from the public, shared them back with the public
Yeah.
again. And through that process of really listening, doing research, presenting research to the public,
Yeah.
we came up with like 7 overarching ideas and 100 action items to achieve those 7 key points.
So as if I understand you correctly, we're actually talking about this today. You just mentioned to me that the Common Council just acted on this. Can you tell us,
yeah.
Jermaine? This is how cool we are.
We're breaking the news right here that on last Tuesday, the Common Council voted to pass and adopt the Vision Zero Action Plan. And on Tuesday, the mayor will have a signing ceremony with some of our biggest supporters and community leaders on this issue to really highlight that, now we're turning to finding the resources
Yeah.
to deliver on these 100 big ideas.
We are the first to be able to report on this.
Breaking
right?
news.
Exactly. So we are actually ahead of the mayor
Wow.
in making the announcement to the community. That's how we roll on this show. That's what we do on The Difference. So So this is wonderful news. So you got all this robust, and so the process was how long? What it culminated on this Tuesday. How long before had you been doing this?
For a year and a half, we've really been doing this planning work. We did an early open house to get people's ideas. We analyzed all of that, did a lot of research, then opened up a survey and did a second series of open houses, and then actually then presented a draft plan and had some final open houses.
Okay.
All the time doing as many presentations and listening sessions as we could at community groups.
Okay. And so were these open houses throughout the city?
We were at Villard Library and Mitchell Library. And then we went to neighborhood groups like Rooted and Rising when they had a public meeting.
Okay. So just using community resources through and all.
Yeah, very thankful for lots of partners. The Coalition for Safer Driving was they were the organization that really pushed initially for Vision Zero to be adopted. They were highlighting what a big issue reckless driving was and realized, well, Vision Zero is that big idea, the right goal, and then this idea that we need to have multiple interventions. We're not going to fix this only with additional police. We're not going to fix this only with changing street designs. We're not going to change this only by telling drivers to do the right thing. We need to do all of these things and do them together and really see the payoffs.
Okay.
So thanks to them and a lot of their community contacts, we were able to have, very deep conversations with community groups as we developed.
And where does Vision Zero come from?
It comes from Sweden.
Wait. It comes from Sweden?
Yeah. So Sweden, there was some national transportation officials and they were thinking about their road system and they were like, well, what should our goal be for our road system? Like, how many people should we let die in our design? What should that goal be? And they kind of sat and looked at each other and were like, well, the goal has to be zero. Why? How could we just say, like, imagine if our water system was like, well, if only 10 people die drinking the water every year, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is not acceptable.
Right.
So they were the first ones to really say, we're going to make zero the goal. And they they have decreased by 90% their traffic fatalities.
Okay.
So it takes a lot of effort and it's a heavy lift, but it really is the only appropriate goal. I mean, do you want to die next year on the roads? Do I want to die next year on the roads? We can only be safe if everybody's safe.
Yeah, I am not, I'm not ponying up for that one.
Yeah, me neither.
Wow.
Me neither.
So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so one of the issues is what we talked about, whether or not we'd be able to take calls today, and I think since we don't have our other special guest that was coming in, we'll see if there are folks along the way here. So yes, okay, so we do have a caller who's calling in, and caller, you're on.
Hey, good afternoon. I got questions about and some concerns about Vision Zero. Now, Vision Zero, are they also interwoven into the camera system?
Not currently.
Not currently. Well, when I got caught on to Vision Zero, it was out of California, and that's when it was just taking off. And the thing is that I see California implementing their laws across this country, and they're very liberal out there. And I feel as though Vision Zero is sort of like a COVID thing: 6 feet apart, stay 6 feet back, put your mask on. Here we all are marching the same way, in a single file lane. And in some cases, just not too long ago, I seen the ambulance on 35th Street trying to get past they narrowed the lanes, and the ambulance is sort of stuck there. And sometimes every second counts to get that individual to a hospital. So, I have some real concerns. And then when you look at it coming from Sweden only got about 8 million people in it. And some of their speed laws are like 100. You can do like 110 or 90. 80 in most of the areas, residential is probably 30 to 50. But in some of their highways, you can do 100 miles an hour in Sweden. You can't do that in America. I feel that this is a social program. It's a way to program men into thinking tunnel vision. And in some cases, these kids are using these roundabouts and these bump outs. It's actual drive. What do you call those things when you in and out, because they play these games and they get on our regular roadways, and it's just one of those things. And then we get into reckless driving. Reckless driving is a discrepancy of the officer. So here's a girl that just got pulled over. They gave her a speeding and a reckless driving. Now, how do you do that? I mean, speeding would be deemed reckless driving. Then there's no room, there's no tolerance for an accident. Some things are actually accidents. So if you deem that all accidents, then I mean, it's all. I mean, where's the line at? Because some stuff is really an accident.
Yeah. No, hey, thanks.
I'll take your answer off the air because I know I gave some good questions, and there's a lot of inquiring minds that want to know.
Hey,
we don't want Vision Zero around here. That's what we pay the police for, to bust these knuckleheads, put them in jail, take their license, revoke their license privileges. All of this other stuff is an inconvenience, man.
Hey, well, thanks so much for calling in. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, so traditionally traffic safety has been, mostly based on police work and citations and getting arrested and the judiciary. But we have seen that with that system working, things are getting worse, still getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that can't be like we're living in that experiment of that's the main way we handle traffic safety, and it really isn't working.
Well, so just
more than 70 people are dying a year.
So just for the purposes of everybody knowing what is the Vision Zero plan that's here, right? Because it sounds like there's a plan that's very specific to Milwaukee, at least what you've produced here, right?
Right. And I would say that like Sweden had the idea, and that the goal of our transportation system should be that no one dies.
Mm-hmm.
But how we get there is really what the community creates.
Okay.
And our plan outlines that.
If I remember correctly from what you said earlier, there are 7 major objectives.
Yeah.
And what are the 7 major objectives? I know you said that there's 100 different activities, but what are the 7 major objectives that you have?
Yeah, all of our 100 action items fall into these 7 major goals.
Okay.
So those are build safe streets for all users, prioritizing the high injury network. Right now, 9% of our street miles create 59% of the serious injury and fatal crashes.
Okay, let's break this down. So 9% of all our street miles, and there's a few hundred miles worth of streets in
thousands.
In the city,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so of all of the infrastructure we have, all the streets that we have in the city of Milwaukee, you're talking about 9% of all of that is generating over half of all of the injuries?
Yeah, of the serious injuries and deaths.
Wow. Okay.
So that is where we really want to invest. One thing is that the city of Milwaukee is not the sole owner of that 9% of roadway.
Okay.
For example, Capitol Drive, most of that is managed by the state, and they get to decide. Same thing with Fond du Lac. They really decide the design of those streets.
Okay.
So, we want to have and need to have partnerships and appreciate partnerships with the county and the state as we think about, how can Fond du Lac be a road that has less crashes.
Yeah.
And everyone might have to go a little bit slower, but can we make it where less people die? And hopefully we are willing to make that trade-off. And that's what we hear.
I want to make sure to go through all 7.
Yeah.
But I've, at my age, I want to make sure that I'm asking questions as they come to. So how did you come to understand this 9%? Like what kind of data analysis was the city doing that actually got you down to figuring out, because that's extraordinary that you could have that much coming out of that little amount of the roads. And do we have a sense of where those are?
Yes, we do know where those are. If anyone wants to go look for themselves, you can just search for City of Milwaukee Traffic Violence Dashboard.
Okay.
We take the state data about crashes, and you can explore that in your own community.
What's that dashboard again?
City of Milwaukee Traffic Violence Dashboard.
Okay.
And on that map will be the high injury network. All the streets that are in a bright color, I think it's yellow, are the ones that are part of the high injury network.
Okay.
And we calculated that with a consultant who looked at about 25 years of crash data. Wow. And geocoded it and saw where it was lining up, and then did some predictive analysis too. And that helped us. So we used a lot of science and math to figure out exactly which roads really are doing this.
So that's informative just in itself, just knowing that, hey, this is the area.
Right. And I think it takes it from 0 traffic deaths. That's such a good goal, but that sounds so impossible. And when we pair it with good research, like, well, actually, if we fix 9% of our roads, we can cut our death and serious injury by 60%.
That's incredible.
So it makes it realistic again.
Wow. You know what? I got a sinking suspicion that it's time for a break. And so we're going to pick this conversation up right after this. Hey, WNOV family, this is Will Martin, and you are listening to The Difference. And we are talking about reckless driving today. And this is a topic that we have talked about on this show. We've had mothers on who have been just, sobbing about loss. Jermaine's usually on one side of the board, but this occasion last year, he actually came on this side of the table to talk about his own family's experience in this. And this is something that is affecting people all over the city. And we're finding out across the county and the region as well, because people aren't just speeding through Milwaukee. They're doing this through the region, and we got a chance to show. So now, those of you, I already said to you, if you are not watching the show, you are missing half the show. So you wouldn't know right now that we now have an older woman who just joined us, who's actually relatively new to the Common Council. So how many times have you been over to the studio as an older woman so far?
You know what? I've only been over to the studio only on a few occasions as an older woman.
Okay, so I'm happy to welcome
thank
the
you.
Honorable Charlene Moore. Charlene Moore.
Yes.
The older woman. Which district are you coming from?
The dynamic District 10.
Okay, well, you know what? Now, let me tell you, I think 10 is wonderful, but I don't want any competition between 10 and 15 because Stamper has been over here a few times, and I don't want Stamper feeling like there's competition on this show.
Hey, there's always competition. We love a little healthy competition. Stamper knows that.
That is beautiful. So I know that you are passionate about this issue of reckless driving.
Yes.
And I was just saying before during the break as you came in that one of the examples that we showed right at the beginning of this conversation was the aftermath of reckless driving, where we had a totaled vehicle, 20-year-old who was driving, minding his own business. His entire front in the car, you think about an SUV, right? The entirety of the front of the car just torn up, completely smashed. That car rolled over twice, and they had to right the car later on. For somebody who ends up with a concussion, who's got to deal with all the drama after this, the person who hit him as part of the reckless driving, 13 charges from January to October, just in 2024. Wow. Had prior charges before that, 19 years old. 19 years old. And so, the question is, well, what do we do about this kind of situation? I know you worked with young people as well. And so I want to make sure that we get you into this conversation as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And thank you so much for not only having myself, but Jessica on as well to talk about such a incredible issue that impacts every single one of us. We've seen it. We pull up to the light. We stop, most of us law-abiding citizens, when the light is red, we stop.
Thank you.
So, we see it normally now, where somebody comes in the lane to the right of us and, just dodges the light.
Right.
This issue impacts us as a city because what you're talking about is that aftermath.
That's right.
Right. When someone is recklessly, going speeds beyond, believable down our local streets and main streets.
In some cases, the police are finding folks doing 100 on city streets.
It just, again, it's mind blowing for me.
Yeah.
And we have to tackle this issue. There is no, and I want people to know that there is no one way out. There's no singular solution.
This is a good test, because Jessica just said this before, that there are so many different things you need to do, and no one thing's going to. So I'm glad you passed the test as to the fact that you all had the same story.
No, absolutely. And we know that it's going to take a team and a community effort. And that's why it's so important that with Vision Zero, the engagement and the education is so critically important. It's going to start with me as a mom. When I taught my kids how to drive, when I, shared with them the rules of the road. Yes, driver's education, gives them that information as well. But though a lot of those principles come from home, they see what we did, what me or their dad did when we were driving and behind the wheel, right?
Right.
We modeled for them. So it really starts with that education, and it starts with us.
Right. So we just had a call in that was the specific call was around the issue of, this comes originally out of Sweden. Seeing some of this kind of implementation coming out of places like California, very liberal places where perhaps they're more on the preventative side and less on the consequence side for people with bad behavior, and what do we do about it?
Yeah.
As an older woman, what is it about Vision Zero that you embraced? Why would you support this initiative?
Yeah, for me, it was a plan. I think prior to Vision Zero, we had, and again, Vision Zero was from an offset of community leaders and community folks coming together to address the issue. So this is, what was born and being pushed out of that, to have a very concrete plan as to what is it that we can share with our community that's going to address our reckless driving issue.
And these are suggestions from the community.
Oh my goodness. And Jessica, you could probably talk a little bit more about that, but I was a part of the earlier groups that, again, grassroots organizations that came together that met regularly, and so I want to thank those, individuals that pulled together. I don't want to start naming names because I'm gonna forget some people. But those were the initial partners that, wanted to address our reckless driving situation, that didn't have a ton of money, that didn't have a ton of resources, but knew that this was a critical issue to address, and came together. And finally, this is sort of the birth of that. Vision Zero is the birth of that.
We're going to get back into the details, but before we do that, I understand that the council just voted on that this week.
Yes.
Right. So this is brand new, and I'm grateful that, of course, you all are coming on the show to talk about this right here. So, can you talk a little bit about why the council decided, this is something, we have a very large council in the city.
Yeah.
How come the council decided to adopt this? What was the rationale behind, such a large number of the aldermen and alderwomen deciding to move in this direction?
Yeah, as far as the alders supporting this critical issue, I would say for me, because it wasn't this only happens here. It's only in, this individual's district, or that, like, it's happening all over the city. So I think, and I don't want to speak necessarily on behalf of my colleagues, but
you can on the show.
But, I would say again, Jessica and her team did a really great job sharing with us the plan and what the plan entailed and how it was a benefit. This is a citywide initiative. This plan doesn't target, we're just going to target this population in this community. This was actually a citywide plan, which I think it was a no-brainer for all of us to be able to support.
Okay, great. Well, so, all right, we're going to now switch back to, so I want you to just start from the beginning in terms of, as I understand it, there are 7 major objectives. And from those seven major objectives, there are 100 different activities that associate with this. We're not going to have you necessarily have to read 100 activities, but
I can read 7.
But the 7, I think,
Yeah.
if you can share with us, what are those major objectives? What are we trying to do? I know one was, the overarching is, hey, we want 0 deaths, right? And I think we can all appreciate that. Now, the issue is, like, how do we get there? But in terms of what the community came up with as a part of this process, as you talked about, let's hear what those 7 are.
Yes, we already talked a little bit about building safe streets for all users, prioritizing the high injury network. The other ones are support accountability in the justice system with a focus on prevention. Clearly, if someone has 14 charges and does something, there's a break in the system.
Yeah.
Prevention earlier is probably part of what needs to happen, and
Yep.
serious consequences at the end. The other, and we maybe can circle back to that more, create vibrant, people-centered places. When you have an area that people are out on the sidewalk, going from business to business, that's a vibrant place. People naturally slow down. They want to look in the shop windows. They see someone with a stroller. So honestly, having activity at street level, and having shade for people, having benches for people who take the bus, these sorts of things help lay the groundwork for this. We want to promote traffic safety through communication, encouragement, and education. Number 5, ensuring timely and effective EMS and medical care.
Okay.
6, advocating for safer vehicles. and 7 championing state law changes. I do want to say for this advocating safe vehicles one, that really is mostly a federal level issue, but
Okay.
the city of Milwaukee, all these other Vision Zero cities across the country are really trying to highlight that if we just let cars continue to get bigger and heavier, they are kind of death machines when they run into somebody who's simply walking.
Mhm.
And we really need to kind of rein that in. And on that example of someone who had all these charges related to unsafe driving, we could have all new cars have a speed limiter. Why does a car go over 80? So you could have a general speed limit of like, why does it, like, I can go 160 allegedly according to my speedometer. Why is that even there? And 2, we could use more advanced technology, and this does exist, that could like limit you to 60 in a city or 10 miles over a speed limit or to the speed limit. What about that? What if we actually, so those are some big ideas, and some people might be a little afraid of them.
I know
but we also have
Jermaine and I we heard from folks last year, some people raising this issue about a regulator, the ability to say, hey, if you start topping out at being able, or I think Al Holmes called in and talked about the idea of having now this is a civil liberties issue, right? But he talked about also the ability to have a kill switch where the police, instead of them having to be chasing somebody forever, hey, look, buddy.
Yeah, I actually said that, and it's funny that you were talking about it now because I just had this conversation that I think that they should regulate something or make it mandatory with these new vehicles that you can put some type of computer chip or something that you can give these police officers access to, that you don't have to chase when it's a situation like that. You can activate this, shut the car down, lock the doors in. So now you got them inside.
Yeah.
The car is stopped. It's no longer a threat. Now
to anybody else.
Yeah. So now you can do what you have to do. And I actually saw this years ago on this show called Car Bait.
Yes, where they actually then had the automatic locks where it was locking you in.
They would lock you in, shut the car down, and they in the car and you pull up on them and you can take them to jail. And this, I guarantee you, that would cut back on a lot of these deaths from police chasing and they running into people and innocent people that's on their way home that's minding their business, and you get caught up in that type stuff.
Right. We just had a situation, thinking about what was going on when I was doing the turnaround work at Columbia Savings and Loan Association, right? And we, sitting right there at North and Fond du Lac, and both streets have got issues, right? Yeah. So the two streets coming together, they're going to be issues. Yeah. So at 2:00 in the morning, heavy SUV comes through. They're being chased by the police. They're doing, top speed. Mm-hmm. They hit a woman who's just minding her business, trying to go to work. Her car spins out to Bethel Church. The SUV spins out and hits the bank and crushes. You know how hard you got to be going to crush brick?
Yeah.
Crush brick. And so they literally crushed the brick on the building, and the whole doorway. When I came in that day, the door frame, not the door frame had been pushed in several inches because of the impact of that. So it's just, again, that force is incredible. And 2:00 in the morning,
it costs us all.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, someone lost their life or was injured, and there's just these costs that keep getting borne by businesses.
Well, and I think about the insurance. Really before you came in, Alderwoman, I was talking about Allstate Insurance did an analysis, and they looked at collisions across the country, and we were listed as, unfortunately, one of the most dangerous cities in America. We have an above the national average level of collisions. Yeah. Of course, because they're paying out, they know exactly where these are happening, right? Yeah. And so this is not a problem for somebody else. This is actually costing all of us, because even if you don't live in the city, if they find out you're driving into the city regularly for your job, your rates go up based on where you're taking the car.
That's it. Really quick, I wanted to touch on the technology piece, because I think that is a space where we could, really advocate with manufacturers, because guess what? When I ended up buying a new car, this year.
It's almost like buying a house.
Oh my goodness.
And a computer.
Right. And so, the features in the
Mhm.
vehicle,
Yep.
my insurance went down slightly because of the features in the
Okay.
vehicle.
Safety features.
Yeah.
I walk away from the car, my
Yeah.
door automatically locks, and I love that feature. I walk away from my husband's car, and when I'm like, oh, door's not locked. Okay, all right, got to lock the door, right? Like, but I received a text message the other day that said my oil was low, and I need to get my oil
Yeah.
changed. Like
This is all
that's
part of the
in-
smart
this
technology.
is all a part of the smart technology, right? So I have to say, with technology, there are ways that we can build, because remember, we're putting in hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah.
to revamp streets,
Right.
to make them safe for the vulnerable, our
Mhm.
elders,
Yeah.
children, right?
Yep.
So hundreds of millions
Right.
of dollars.
And we're doing all
Mostly
of
grants.
this.
We try to get
Right.
as many grants as we can.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying,
But
the
cash is
the
cash.
money that goes into that level of infrastructure, when we can do that and lobby to manufacturers to say, you all have to do a better job.
Right.
The new vehicles that are coming out, you tap them, they're lighter. A lot of them, they're just not made the same way
Right.
as they used to be, right?
Yeah.
And again, all of that has to do with a lot of the technology, etc., and the safety features
Mhm.
that are installed in those vehicles.
Right.
But we have an obligation to advocate, because we're taking a lot of those dollars. Yes, a lot of them are grants and those sorts of
Right.
federal and state dollars that we're using to really build out our infrastructure so that we can have safer streets.
Right.
We now have protected bike lanes, right? For some, some people love them, some people hate them, but I love them, because our young people aren't riding bikes anymore, because their parents are like, absolutely not with the driving that's going on.
Right.
Absolutely not. You will be not driving, riding your bike on our street. But I remember when I was younger, we rode our bikes everywhere.
Right. Right.
Right?
That's childhood.
That's it. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So now we're building an infrastructure to figure out how to provide that safety and get back
That's
to
awesome.
it.
And on the technology side, I mean, New York is passing a law where if you are a repeat speed offender, you will get a intelligent speed assist installed in your car, kind of like drunk drivers getting a
The breathalyzer that's built
installed.
in.
So we don't have to. We could make every new car have these things, or we can say you are faced with these
Chronic.
charges.
Yeah.
You can have this installed to be
Well,
able to.
I want to come right back to this because I want to talk about stolen vehicles. And, every time I have him looking up, I get a little nervous because it seems like we must be at time for break. I could feel when Jermaine's like, it's time, right? It's time. So, okay, we're going to come back to this, and then we get the lightning round because it's going to move fast after this. So come right on back.
What's the difference?
difference. And we have been talking about reckless driving, and really, this is the first time in the city that we actually have a plan. We've already had a call in to say, hey, this is a whole lot about some other folks. Let's deal with the consequences for folks. So I wanted to make sure that before we get out of here today, we talk a little bit about one that you say high injury network. High injury network, that's the 9% of the thousands of miles of road that we have in the city of Milwaukee. Only 9% of the roads, you said, cause 59% of all the injuries that occur in the city.
Yep, serious injuries and deaths.
Okay, now the sad part of this is that they're the places you think they are. When we say high injury network, it's a nice term for Capitol, Fond du Lac. You said that there's 27th Street. Okay, so basically where you think it would be is where it is, right? And it's really that small number of roads that are causing all these accidents.
It's the drivers on those roads.
It's the
that are
drivers on
causing
those
these
roads.
crashes.
That's right.
But
It's the
Mhm.
drivers on those roads. Okay, so that's one of the issues that you're tackling. Okay, second thing is consequences. I know last year when we had the conversation, one of the reasons why I was incredibly frustrated about this topic is why aren't we doing more about it? Right now, as I understand it, what the city of Milwaukee can do as a municipal issue is to give you a ticket. But now if you have killed somebody, if you are destroying, if I'm just trying to go to work and you destroy my car, the worst that I can give somebody is a ticket, So Alderwoman, why can't we do more from the city's perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question that I know a lot of residents are pondering. The gentleman that you talked about, the 19-year-old that
Yeah.
had a laundry list of citations already,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
But yet he continues to drive. He
Right.
continues to sort of wreak havoc
Right.
on our community. And I want residents to know that we want to get the end of the people call them the bad actors. Those
Right.
are the individuals that we want to support in reforming, right?
Mhm.
And providing those sort of,
Or put away
necessary
somewhere.
consequences,
Right.
I
I think the caller was like, look,
to deter
put
the
'em in jail.
behavior. And again, I, I'm a big proponent on how do we use as many different options as possible to
Yeah.
be able to curb the behavior, to
Mhm.
be able to learn from the behavior, stop doing it so that we can bring safety back to our streets. And I think that's where a lot of the challenges are because of, so your residents are like, well, why don't you just do? And it's just like, I wish we could. But we also have state law that we have to adhere to. People talk about red light cameras.
Mhm.
The city cannot install red light cameras because
And why?
of state law.
State law.
Yeah,
Okay, prohibits you. So there's
Absolutely.
limitations on what the city can do as a municipal issue,
Yeah.
and you're not allowed to put somebody up for felony charges, right? You can only do what a municipality can do, and no municipality can actually charge anybody with a felony, right?
That
It's
is
got to be the
correct.
state, the district attorney, somebody else has got to be able
It's
to
complex.
file that, right?
It's really, really complex. And that's why, this initiative, that involves the accountability for everyone. It's not just the city, doing something. And that's why I was looking at the tenets of the Vision Zero plan, where it says human makes mistakes. Death and serious
Right.
injuries,
So, by the
unacceptable,
way,
right?
that was one of the issues the caller brought up as well, is some of these are just accidents, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's just accident. So as you say, part of the tenet is, hey, we recognize some of these are just simply that. It's an
Absolutely.
accident.
Very few.
Mhm.
Like if someone has no history of heart problems, has a heart attack while they're driving and runs into
Right.
someone, that is an accident.
Right.
It's an accident.
If you are on medication that comes with a warning, you should not be driving on this medication, and
And
then
you
you hit someone,
drive,
that's not an accident.
Right.
That's a crash.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the vast majority of what we see in the city really are crashes.
Mhm.
I can't wait till we eliminate all the crashes, and then we are dealing with these, very rare things that are very hard to prevent. But so much of what we see is preventable, and not
Yeah.
speeding is the single thing we can do. So we have 100 actions, but the most important action that anybody can do is just drive the speed limit,
Yeah.
care about
Mhm.
your community, care about yourself. we can wrap this all up
Yeah.
if we start doing that. I know that doesn't come that easy, but really
Yeah.
everybody trying to drive better, drive the speed limit really does help. And we're going to layer on all these other things.
And
I do think
really quick, I just wanted to say really quick, Jessica, before you finish that last point, is just the language, the importance of the language change, because we're so used to saying, oh, it's a car accident.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Versus, oh, it's a car crash, because again, you talk about what it means to have an accident,
Right.
right? Most of these can, again, be avoided. So I'm glad that you all are retraining us, because for me now I'm more conscious as how I describe something,
Mhm.
right? So that we can begin to understand these are actually things that we can curb, that we can reduce, that we can eliminate.
right.
Well,
And
so-
then with your own driving, like, am I driving to try to not get in a crash? Versus, I think anything that happens to me will just be an accident. No, like
No.
we have responsibilities. Let's avoid these crashes.
Oh, I know if you're not
And-
watching for you and everybody else on this road, you will not make it down these roads.
Right. And I
right?
do think we really need to divide like driving behavior between criminal and just like negligent. I mean, the law does this generally, but it really is the police, the judiciary, DAs that deal with the criminal behavior. And that is a big issue. And we have a system to work on that, and that system needs to be strengthened. And sometimes we need law changes and things like
Yeah.
that. But, you know, like judges are independently elected and they get to rule how they want. And so, you know, no one gets to tell them what to do, but we live in the system where collectively we can hopefully see
Well,
some
Jermaine's going to get a little
improvements.
itchy over here, and I'm waiting
Yeah.
for him. I'm trying to make sure we get this in before
Yes,
he gets
no,
too close to
please.
that. But I want to make sure to kind of also, press the council to really go back to the state to look for what can we do as a community, because obviously this is impacting the city of Milwaukee more than it impacts other communities. It impacts Milwaukee County more than it does other counties. This is really a place where it would be great. Everyone's insurance is going up. Everyone's insurance is going up. If you are living in or working in Milwaukee County, in the city of Milwaukee, because of reckless driving. And so to be able to get those consequences higher, so we're not talking anymore about a 19-year-old who's got 13 charges in 1 year. I shouldn't even say 1 year, in 10 months. 13 charges in 10 months as a 19-year-old. And still nothing that we can do more to that person. And so, really I want to push on that part. Also, as we are just kind of wrapping this up, I understand that the mayor is going to be making an announcement about this on Tuesday. Can y'all just go back and let the mayor know, if you really want to make an announcement, you just come on the show and you could get it knocked out, right? Because he could be here on a nice sunny day letting us know, and we'd be able to make sure thousands of people already know.
But we'll have food as well. So Vision Zero.
Well, here.
Listen, we're going to where the food trucks are. The food, Jessica.
Okay,
will
I tell you what,
definitely
then
talk.
this is what we need to
You
do.
can't beat that unless you come on.
We got some land over here across the way, and I got a plan. We put some food trucks across the street.
Yeah.
We bring the mayor over here, make the announcement over here, bring the food over there.
We'll do
Once
it next
again.
time.
And
We'll
there
do
we
it
go.
next
we're
time.
activating the
Yeah.
street. That's going to slow people down.
There
They're
you
gonna
go.
want to stop and get lunch
There
with
you
us.
go.
There you
There we
go.
are. That is
I love
that is it. Well, hey, you know what? We seem to have been able to handle this issue this time with a solution ahead of time. Although I see you inching up. Oh wait, you better.
I got
better
to want to
quickly.
get in there quick if I can. So there is one of the recommendations in the plan is to lobby the state to change the law so we can have traffic safety cameras in the city of Milwaukee, and that is a shared goal between the mayor and the Common Council. And we are seeing like some really interesting progress on that, and we would love to come back and talk
Hey,
about that.
I would
But-
love to have a debate on that, because there are people who have who look at it as their privacy rights
Privacy.
versus and if it's an intrusion on. But we're gonna have to do that on a different show. So
Yes.
Alderwoman Charlene Moore and Jessica Weinberg,
Thank
Vision
you.
Zero Policy Director for the City of Milwaukee. Thank you very much for coming in here and scooping the story on this show.
Yes.
Peace out.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.